Good evening, everyone. What a pleasure to join this 4 days event. It is such a blessing in our troubled times. I need to thank everyone that made this possible, and especially the committee and my PhD director, Professor Laurent Ablot. My contribution is about a specific type of medieval resurgence that occurred in the second part of the 19th century. It is about contemporary heraldic stained glass windows and the idea of a permanence and medievalism. I'm going to discuss it through the case of an important example located in Saint-André Cathedral in Bordeaux, my hometown. This case study is extracted from my PhD researches that are still ongoing about heraldic stained glass windows in the Diocese of Bordeaux. It equals to a French département called La Gironde, and Bordeaux is the capital of Gironde. This body of work is almost exclusively from the mid-19th century. So, all right. As an introduction, let me explain that for France, the second part of the 19th century is a period of ecclesial refurbishment. The churches, one after another, get necessary decorations. Some of them are new churches. Some of them are pre-existing churches that had to get their decorations back because of the damages caused by the French Revolution. But not only, also because of the fact that between Renaissance and the siècle des Lumières, the 18th century, it was a time when bright light in churches was preferred, and as a result, stained glass panels that shadowed the insides used to be removed. So after the French Revolution, the religion could make its return with the Concordat in 1801 under the reign of Napoleon, and then French monarchy's restoration in 1814. This Restauration des Bourbons was pious and Catholic and helped to resurrect the cult. So, since the dawn of the 19th century, French clergy slowly rebuilt its institutions and its churches. This resettlement of Catholicism went along with neo-medievalism, and in particular neo-Gothic, because Gothic style was an effective national evocation. Gothic appeared during the climax of the French Catholic civilization. So, in order to rebuild the cult, it was a manner to edify believers with the suggestive power of Gothic. With, for example, high spires, large bays, letting a mystical and colored light come into the churches. The use of heraldry as well, quite evocative of such era. This is the reason why things were redone with the suggestive power of Neo-Gothic and not Neo-Rococo, for instance, because it's part of some national pride and identity. So you have to understand that the massive refurbishment of churches created a stained glass rebirth during the mid-19th century. And in this formal context, heraldic windows played a prominent role because it was fashionable, it was evocative of tradition, of Middle Ages, and also useful to push donors to pay for a very large and necessary network of expensive stained glass decorations, because the donors they could display their arms and names in such windows. And also, arms in windows do not only deal with donors, they could even be useful to promote the rise of religion, recalls its antiquity, promote the church itself by showing its history, customs, or even mark out and promote ecclesial hierarchy by displaying their arms. Arms of institutions, religious orders, chapters, archbishops, popes, prelates of all kinds. Well, with that being said, I'm glad to give you a glimpse of Saint-André Cathedral. It's about two specific heraldic windows that illustrate what was said in introduction. So here we are, Saint-André Cathedral with two heraldic windows that are in the chevet. The first one is the chapel Notre-Dame du Mont-Carmel, facing north, and shows these four windows dated 1857. The iconography here shows the genealogy and history of the Virgin Mary. First, on the left, we have patriarchs from the Ancient Testament that was said to be her ancestors, and then on the right has a progression sense of the New Testament. These windows are due to the generosity of powerful benefactors, absolutely indispensable for the process of buying this grand program. It is the reason why on the top of each panel you see a little escutcheon. Some of them are authentic coat of arms of old and noble families of the town. For the ones that don't have arms, you can see their initials. Here, FS stand for François Samazeuil, an important city councillor, and here the little cross below means he was awarded of the Order of the Legion of Honor. Above, we see bigger escutcheons. The first one shows the inscription of the glassmaker artist, Joseph Villiers. It's in Latin, not in French. That is quite rare for secular inscriptions. It makes it look more medieval. Here, arms of the chapter, arms of the town that offered some panels. Arms of the Archbishop, the Cardinal Donnet, a very important administrator and donor in general, a prelate that led the diocese towards its disappeared greatness. He was zealous with regard to religious art. And here, next to it, arms of the Pope, Pius IX. That is not a donor, but a metonymy of the Church, and a mark of ultramontanism. The Cardinal said such program was stylized in the 14th and 15th century Gothic style in order to match the ambient architecture of the chevet. On the opposite side of the chevet, facing south, there is the chapel Saint Joseph with windows dated 1861. It honors the patron saint of some crafts corporations because Joseph, as a carpenter and a major saint, was considered patron of craftsmen. And let's note that the idea of a window of corporations is a medieval topos in the mind and the speech of erudition at this time. A kind of archetype of something that sounds medieval. Such arms are just historicists. They do not report any donation from any corporation. In fact, donations came from other entities, notability of the town itself, and the clergy. Even corporations disappeared in France in 1791 because of a law following the French Revolution called La Loi Le Chapelier. But sometimes, I know, you can read in the mid-19th century sources things about actual corporations, but it is a misuse of language, a kind of conservative synonym of group of professions that is nostalgic of the Ancien Régime. These arms show a fragment of Bordeaux's history in a sort of archaeological display, proud of a rediscovery of the municipal identity, and I guess through a very important document. It's a huge register called les volumes reliés d'Osier, huge registers that recorded coat of arms of all the society at the very end of the 17th century. And recorded, medieval coat of arms that existed before. And as you can see, they're reused arms of this register for the chapel. So, in order of appearance, we have glaziers and carpenters with Joseph below. Here it's a wink of the glassmaker painter himself, Joseph Villiers, a Catholic artist who probably made a discount or gave the panel of Saint Joseph, his own patron saint, as he did elsewhere for another church, maybe. It's a kind of wink to his ancestors, the occupation of glaziers, and probably a mark of devotion. So we have glaziers, carpenters, goldsmiths, blacksmiths, shoemakers, weavers, masons, coopers, saddlers, bellfonders, potters, tilers, furbishers, bakers, nailers, pâtissiers, dyers, and upholsters. Above, arms of the Archbishop, the Cardinal donné, it's a mark of donation. It's the same thing for the town. And rightward, the town gave 3,000 francs. It is equal to the price of 5 common horses, if you want a concrete equivalence of what means such sum. And next to it, arms of the chapter that was donor and commissioner of the decoration. So, as a conclusion, such a network of arms provided to churches historical thickness that was crucial during the 19th century, with this clerical institution rising from the ashes of the French Revolution and had the research of strength and credit through its antiquity and past sovereignty. Even at this time, church power was absolutely not guaranteed, and anti-clericalism reigned. So such efforts to give to the church and artistic coherence and grandeur is part of something spiritual and also a political strategy. And grand heraldic windows, as we have just seen, are a pinnacle of the expression of a medieval identity, a kind of model to follow for survival through an unpredictable modern future. But in the same time, they also reactivated this pragmatic and empirical solution of a coat of arms in windows as a process to call for donors and for elites of the past. For instance, for all aristocracy, that was the perfect moment to demonstrate the virtue of their rank and remind their Ancien Régime notoriety. And many of them were monarchists as well, so they did like this revival of tradition. And on the other hand, new nobility as well, such as the ones titled by the Empire, or kings of the Restauration des Bourbons, or even papal nobility. They were all concerned by this opportunity of having their shimmering emblem sealed into the window of a church. Prestige for generations to come. And the church took advantage of this. Well, according to the conclusions conveyed by my contemporary body of work, I assume heraldic stained glass decorations is very widespread practice that allow us to see an articulated network of hundreds of emblems with well-reasoned permanent features. The most sacred entities are upward and eastward towards the divine presence, and secular benefactors always below clerical characters, except if it's a considerable donor. Given the amount of coat of arms in the ecclesial windows of Gironde, 750, I would say that they are a true paradigm of medievalism. However, this effort has limits. Sometimes the conviction of medieval reconnection and remembrance of history seems a bit artificial. In my body of work, I know the case of a priest in Soulac, le curé mesuré, that is ashamed to see how numerous are the windows showing patron saints of donors. He says sometimes that it steals the opportunity to show the legitimate window of a saint, historically venerated in the church. Sometimes I can't deny this feeling of pseudo-historicism, a kind of feature of the 19th century. in Bazas, in Gironde, in the cathedral. They're generic evangelical stained glass windows with coat of arms everywhere. But the important history of the church itself and its foundation is not even told in glazed decoration. Kind of paradoxical, isn't it? To end, I really have to emphasize that coat of arms in windows are used continuously through the ages, from medieval times to contemporary era, as an intuitive ornament for such a medium. Even as though those two practices, medieval and contemporary, have different means, I assume there is a permanence because of the medium itself, because of the DNA of stained glass. That is a very expensive technique, timelessly expensive, and often determined by donors and commissioners who can then interfere with the sacred and express in the same time many complex inclinations, as charity, devotion, eschatology concerns, or the search for mundane power and influence. But I personally believe it is necessary to go beyond the stereotype of the vain donor. Sources and research show that things are far more subtle than this. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.